we just opened today an installation of Gary Hill's from 1994 called Circular Breathing. It's in the East Gallery, in the ground floor, and I hope you had all had the opportunity to view it before coming here. The installation is one of the most poetic and remarkable works that we have installed here, and we would like to thank for that the Emanuel Hoffman Foundation collection, who's the owner of the work, whose work belongs to the collection, and kindly they have lent the work to be on display here. Gary is an American artist who is based between the US and Spain, and he has exhibited internationally in really key institutions, including the Pompidou, the Whitney Museum in the States, and his work has been shown in numerous exhibitions, including the Venice Biennale, where he won the Golden Lion in 1995. He's almost one of the pioneers in installation and video art. And the work that we have here on display is an extremely complex but also a simple work at the same time. And it's evocative and poetic and includes moments of concentration, but also moments of speed, and plays a lot with the notion of the image and the notion of time, space, continuity. And maybe with this we can start speaking about circular breathing. Maybe we can start by having a bit of like a short introduction on the work. Where does the title come from? And where is the beginning of the work for you?
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for the introduction. I'm one who shies away from the word pioneer. And I'm probably more of a language artist than a media or video artist, but that aside. The title, Circular Breathing, I have to admit, was not the work did not really come from thinking about that. It came after the work. So probably struggled to find a title for this, but given the kind of repetition and the need for movement, kind of suggested something along these lines. And the fact that I play flute, or I used to play flute, or can play, play around with the flute, I was aware of this notion of circular breathing, so somehow it clicked. Typically that's what happens with titles. They kind of flash into place.
There is a very strong mathematical element to the work, which has to do with the rhythm of the images, with the movement of the images. And it's a very precise work. This is what fascinated me even from the installation, the precision of every images and the importance of this precision. Do you want to say a few things about this, about the mathematical and precision element in it?
For me, this is probably one of the more intuitive works having to do at least with the imagery in it. Although I did record the images in it purposefully for this work. In other words, I didn't accumulate images, then go to an image bank and, that will work and that will work, although that probably would work in the case of this piece. In other words, I could even imagine a whole different set of images. Obviously, it would be different, but the mathematical template put upon this probably has more influence on almost the neural physicality connected to the body than the images themselves. And I may be saying that because, when you see something that is 30 years old for you or anyone else, but for me, there are many people and places in this that are in my life: my mother, my stepfather, my daughter, my ex-wife, a love from the past. So, it's a very different experience for me. So I happily like to see it kind of cut up the way it is. Anyway. Actually, I will explain the process a little bit. It's quite simple. An image comes in from the left side, kind of like reading, I suppose. And at a certain moment, that's determined sometimes by something that happens in the image and or the sound, or just a sense that it's time. It begins to switch between the first and second images, and therefore both are half speed. Then the third image, all three are a third speed, quarter speed, fifth speed, and then at a certain point, the first image lets up, and we go back to quarter speed, third speed, half speed, and real time. This is, although you have the sense of strobing, in other words, the black between images, it's every time it comes back to the individual image, no images are missing, and that's why it goes down in speed. It slows down rather than there's just holes in the image and it looks like it's real time. I know that's difficult to kind of process, but that's the way it is. Anyway.
One way you described to me yesterday, we talked about it, was like also almost like opening a slice of reality, and then through this slice, allowing reality almost to evolve in some sort of rhythmicality, which allows the reality to kind of like happen in a different way. So opening time and space too in that.
Yeah, I mean these what I basically refer to as switch pieces started with a couple of works I called the core series. One was core leaves and one was core glasses. And the inspiration was kind of like from thinking about entering, in this case, I was thinking of film, I suppose, even though I've never made a film in my life. But I wanted to come in from the side, like if you actually took a film strip and you took a razor blade and you tried to cut it this way instead of this way. And it kind of opened up a notion of kind of being inside time with an image, where even doing this to language, where you begin to pull it apart, you don't think of language or certain words as objects; they actually exist in time. So I've done this with language and image, and both separately. Show you some sort of. Well, this is a different installation of this at the Henry Art Gallery in Seattle. It's quite a bit different because you have these sculptural elements also sort of interrupting. I should also point out that all these images that you see are not a perfect representation, because the images are moving so fast you would never see one image like this because your eyes are too slow. Same with this. So the work I did before this, called Between Cinema and a Hard Place, is certainly a more complex kind of, I don't want to say symphony. It's kind of like not a quartet. What's the other thing? A chamber orchestra or something. It has 23 channels and 3 inputs. And what was interesting, that was all kind of almost, I wouldn't say random, but I just kind of like, okay, I got to start with something. So I started with 3 sources. And what happened in the midst of making it, I ran out of time to enable to bring another image in, to fade an image in. So I basically had to borrow time from one of the other images, so it went just black, and then it would fade in an image, and then it would go back to the other image. Again, I realized that this is very hard to process, but that marking became a kind of secondary rhythm to all this kind of switching. And in this case, the switching is varies a lot. Sometimes it's just incredibly rapid, 1 frame per monitor in the back, and that's what you see here. This is actually the kind of the porch of a house through the back door, and it's a continuous panorama, but that's just going. And later works like circular breathing, they use 2 frames because 1 frame did not have the persistence of vision enough that you could gather the image, or especially a sequence, on your eye. So anyway, these are a few more shots of this. Now,
but in reality, one of an issue that you faced by installing or making this work led you into something that inspired circular breathing. Is that what you were saying? Like the time borrowed time.
Yeah, like here in this image here
was pivotal in.
Yeah, I mean, this is an absolutely terrible image, but this sort of, you see 5 images in the foreground here, and if my memory recollects correctly, I kind of, let's say, I stole for myself, and a very similar sequence happened with these images, which were all sort of domestic. And if you remember, or if you do see this work, there's a sequence that starts with a person chopping wood, and each chop cuts the image to 2 images, then 3 and 4 and so on. And in this case, it was cutting an apple, which probably also came out of the core series sort of notion. So this is a much earlier work, having nothing to do with a mathematical template placed on the images kind of from the outside. This, this kind of hallway, these images move up and down based on speech, as well as the images that are, you either have colors or you have images that are kind of animated by the speech. I'm just going to show you a few seconds of a single channel work so you can see the syllabic speaking, automating the images, hopefully.
Well, you know what they say. We've all heard it before. It never ceases to amaze me. This time, it's more than just a change in the weather. They've really outdone themselves. How they ever got it past us, I don't know. In many circles, it's considered the unspeakable. These types of goings-on surface every so often. Statistically, one of us is probably involved.
I hope. See here.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Let's see here. Well,
there's all.
And this?
Okay, yeah, so this is...
primarily speaking, what got year?
1981, 82,
right.
somewhere in there.
So almost 10 years before also.
Yeah.
Of,
and before that, again, where switching was involved, but not, kind of mathematically, there was a work called Mesh, and another one actually called Glass Onion, where the images just kind of plotted around a kind of parameter rectangle. I'm just showing you this too, because this is another work that's recently been migrated or updated, or there's all kinds of terms now in the conservation world, but and this is going to show you just a test of working on it. It's kind of interesting. So this one obviously has the X and Y axes. So they were just sending me this to ask me if it was correct. So I'm going, it looks correct. This is an image from the first series I mentioned, the core series. And these are actually switching, I believe, at every frame. It could be every two, but I think it's every frame. Very fast. It's just vibrating. So only one monitor is on at a time. And the background is continuous, but the foreground is a double of a glass. And much more recently, I again stole from myself, and I made a work called Sine Wave with the same notion of balancing this glass, but outdoors in kind of nature. And it's projected on two screens that are concave and convex that make a sine wave. I don't have a picture of that, but anyway. Same work, different place. Different work, different place.
Which work is this?
Yeah, this is a core series, another terrible photograph. Again, this is switching very rapidly between the two, and then there's a text that plays a lot with a lot of wordplay involving time and leafing and left and right and this sort of thing. So in one, this part really didn't work. The idea was that in one I was holding the leaf, and the other one was framed with a tripod. So one was kind of steady, and the other one was
shaky in a way. Yeah. This is you holding.
Yes, that's me. Yeah. That's my fingernail there. It hasn't been cut. Well, these are just show you what this kind of looks like. Eating, and here is kind of working on the text and how I was trying to make that all work.
So this is how you normally work in terms of like synchronizing or thinking the process or the movement of images and as a script or as a...
I kind of don't normally do anything. But no, I mean, this was definitely one work where it was written knowing that it was going to be dealt with in this way. Mm-hmm. That's not always the case. Sometimes I just write something, although, I mean, I don't really even think of myself as a writer. So it's much more of a various constructions or something along those lines, So another kind of work that, again, has to do with, space, moving through space, particularly with images, instead of just a singular monitor. In this case, these chairs, I mean, they're meant to be sat in. Nobody's there now. The piece is called Disturbance Among the Jars. The Jars. It's based on, or derived from the Gnostic Gospels that were found in jars in Egypt. So just another shot of it. I have a composite of this that'll give you kind of an idea of the movement through the screens. I may have to just press forward.
Ces pierres vous serviront.
It's kind of a slow-moving work in
Comment
many different languages.
Prier. Comment prier? Il est semblable à une graine de moutarde, la plus petite de toutes les graines. Lorsqu'elle tombe dans une terre labourée, elle devient un grand arbre où s'abritent les oiseaux du ciel. Ce que vous n'aimez pas, ne le faites pas. Vous êtes nus, nus devant le ciel. Ce que vous cachez, ce qui est voilé, tout sera découvert.
Soyez patient. Soyez.
Qui suis-je?
Soyez patient. Soyez patient. Soyez patient.
Qui suis-je pour partager?
Soyez
Lorsque vous ferez le 2-1 et que vous ferez l'intérieur comme l'extérieur comme l'intérieur, le haut comme le bas, lorsque vous ferez du masculin et du féminin un unique, afin que le masculin ne soit pas un mâle,
But
que le
in fact,
féminin ne soit
he's
pas une femelle.
improvising with the Gospel of
Comment
Thomas.
prier?
Kind of, yeah, totally alive. Well, anyway, we don't have time for this.
State per testimone.
State per testimone.
State per testimone.
We've already seen that, so let's forget it. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
you
yeah.
mentioned the improvisation of Derrida, of the gospel, and there is an element in circular breathing which has to do with Eric Satie, if I'm not mistaken, and that's
Definitely,
that's
it affects the feeling of the whole thing. It's a work called Vexations, and I believe it's a 24-hour work or something along those lines. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's distorted in many places because it's following the scheme of half time, third time, and quarter time, but somehow it gives a kind of deep bottom to the work, I think. It's a kind of base level. So, yeah.
And in the work between cinema and a hard place, there is also a reference to Heidegger, if I'm not mistaken, right? In
the in between cinema and a hard place is completely. It is a recitation of the nature of language, or at least parts of that, which deal with. He talks about the neighboring nearness of language and poetry or poetics, and he makes it a differentiation between that and parametric time, and he refers to even farms or land and just space and time, basically, and how the way poetry comes out of language, there really is no space and time. They just exist, kind of. And this is used in the, let's say that the composition of the switching. It's highly regulated by this notion of parametric space. So you see lots of telephone poles and wires and differentiations between fields and farms and houses and this kind of thing. Anyway, you know, it's a difficult thing, I think, to use such loaded text by loaded people. But I don't know. There was it was so close to me, the nature of this text. I just felt I had to do it. There is a version of this that, well, both versions are recited by women. One is in English, and the other is in German, and it's really extraordinarily beautiful. So, see what else is here. I forget. Oh yeah. So this was one of the core series, See No Evil or something, and it was destroyed because it just didn't work. However, just recently I finished a work that I believe is derived from this, and it's called None of the Above. It's on view in Iceland right now. I really, when I'm talking about these switch pieces, and particularly between 1 and 0, you have the X and Y axes. The other ones are mostly X, but this one I would almost say is Z. I mean, that's really pushing it, but anyway, it's a good way to think about it. So this is just a still to show you the installation of it. So it's quite large, and it's fairly loud. And this is what it kind of looks like. Let's see here.
One less, lost less.
Can you turn it up a little bit?
Lost less. One less. One lessons of one. The lessons of one on none. Lost on none. Nonetheless, Nonetheless, no one knows from one from one, and number of one. Choose the words.
It's hallucinatory.
Gap. Three standard stoppages. Stopped out. Every breath, one breathe, always the same, always
to this work. Was a similarity in the sound or in the movement of the main subject?
I mean, curiously, like the one that was destroyed, See No Evil, the idea of this title was that it was not see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. It was none of the above. So I was kind of divorcing it from that, but yet the movement in it is completely wrapped up in that somehow. And going off on a limb here a little bit, I think that has something to do with see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil about artificial intelligence.
So we talked about it a little bit, but you said that artificial intelligence is actually a major evil force.
Well, no. I mean,
that artificial intelligence is a possible an evil force of the future. We had a conversation. Yeah,
but everything is possibly evil. But no, more having to do with the notion of that it is the same, and therefore at some point in the future it will mirror the brain. And I'm one of these people who thinks that consciousness and mindness are different than computers, ultimately. That, in fact, AI is still quantitative, even if it's very complex, very helpful, does lots of things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes down to neighboring nearness, no. AI is not invited. So,
what do we have here?
Okay, so this is just, I just thought it's a newer work too, also in Iceland, and this is just a small little excerpt of it. I should point out that inside those raw speakers there are little tiny cameras that move around based on me speaking, so it bounces the. Oops.
You can come, you can come, they can come, air can come. Come one, come some, come all. Welcome. What's it going to be? Heroes or zeros, nones or ones, all is well that ends well. Bed down with dogs, wake up with fleas. Who gets the kick? Who gets the kick? Who gets the kick? And who jumps ship? Pull the rug, pull the plug.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's just a little small, well, it's I don't know, probably a fifth of the work or something. I showed a version of this very rough on the floor in the end of 2016, and about half the text was written the night and early morning Lisbon time when Trump was elected. And the further phrases have been added, just kind of sound bites that are somehow related to that, and some other things too. You heard some pronouns used here and there, and kind of mushing them together into a welcome. So that brings us to a work I'm working on now. Isn't that exciting? So here is maybe an introductory image. This is, I'm working with pronouns. So in this case, this is, and all of them so far use, well, they use text, and the text is capitalized, and I suppose they're in bold. This allows for, certain areas of the letters to perform certain things, and they're centered. So this is he and she, and this is basically using an exclusive OR gate applied to that. An exclusive OR gate, XOR, which means, you can just do this part, wherever one or the other is, there shall be, or one or true, and otherwise not. So there is, so each combination that I do this to, there's 5 variations: an exclusive OR gate like this, an AND gate, which is only where both are. An OR gate combines them, and it's all out there. One. It's interesting when you're trying to describe it outside of truth tables and logic gates. It's a little bit different. I'll show you a few more. This is just kind of working on it. This shows you the 5 variations, so you can see very specifically what happens. Interesting, the exclusive OR gate is actually a combination of she minus he and he minus she.
So it's the middle, right? The exclusive OR gate is the middle, X, OR. And these are symbols or drawings, so it's a 2-dimensional work, right?
This is 2-dimensional.
Does it have an oral or a sound or a movie or an image component that...
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment.
But it will. But not as one thing. I mean, just different things.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the question of pronouns is a very big question at the moment for some time all over the world. And you work here with the English language as the basis. How about other linguistic contexts?
Yes, well, here's another. Here's a different notion where when you add color, it becomes even more complicated in determining the meaning. But anyway, here's French, but it's only 4.
Why? We don't have a 5th.
No, the 5th one is not there. But in this case, the extremely light gray is really not there, but it's to show you sort of the ghost of what was there.
Right.
So frankly, it's quite complicated when you start to think about which one is which. Kind of like it is in real life.
It's a loop on the question.
Yeah. So here's one with she, her, and hers, and he, him, his. Again, those are but these are this one in particular is just a computer rendering. It's not actual drawing yet.
How many languages have you worked with for this in terms of the pronouns in different linguistic systems?
I'm just getting started, so only 2. And here's a prototype sculpture of she, he, and that would be an OR gate. This just shows you the scale. Wow, look what it does to my skin. What kind of projector is this?
Right.
And this is, again, the same thing, but in black and white, just to see what the difference would be. So I just have a kind of, unless you want to go on, a closing little 3-minute tape I made a couple weeks ago. It's really kind of a sketch, but I like it.
It's the latest work then?
Yes, yeah.
That's even more
exciting. This would be the latest work, So let's see. It's called the Whisper Room. So, what is it? could start here.
Sometimes, as we approach, others approaching, an imaginary point coalesces before us, our past trajectories, all the protagonists, all of a sudden, amongst us, resurrected as it were, our whereabouts. The involuntary inventory begins. Sampled earth, unknown holes, literal things too numerous to name, reminiscent of ancient signs, too sober to absorb the slow torque of bonsai, the warmth of what once was, just enough, fades away. Alone in the light, abandoned wood avails itself. I brought you here for reasons I can't disclose. I've worked long hours for this. There is no particular agenda in mind. Nothing here will make or break anything. You, them, or I, each and every one, like tormented insects. By the end, it will not matter, or you will have forgotten the differences once sworn by. I hesitated before deciding not to be present. No doubt a compromise. I apologize. Do you remember the bed, the island, the refuge, the swollen details, shared memorabilia, human propaganda, the fact that you are here? Has that dawned on you? But don't go. I wish there were a way for you to smell my belly for the first time, all over again. I could stand before you, peer down at the crown of your head. We could have gone to see a film, committed to the tedium of plagiarized time, enabling our being together within our separate thoughts. Would it suffice?
Wow, thank you. That's so powerful. So you wrote the text that you narrate. What was the inspiration for the text?
What was what?
The inspiration. What was the starting point of the text?
God, I don't remember.
Because it's a very profound text.
But this was actually I did an installation with this almost, or maybe even exactly the same text, but the phrases or sentences or whatever are 20 to 30 seconds apart. And I mean, a completely different thing. So this, and that was called The Slow Torque of Bonsai, which is one of the lines in there. Slow torque of bonsai. Yes. And I've done a few works along the same lines. The first one was called Midnight Crossing. In fact, there's an anecdote that's kind of interesting about that. At the time, one was using laser discs, and to get a laser disc mastered, you had certain parameters you had to stay within. And one was the time code could not go from 23, 59, 59, 29 to 0. This was called a midnight crossing. But I loved it because the nature of the images were disappearances in Guatemala and, all kinds of references, and it just kind of was beautiful to me. So anyway, and another one was called The Storyteller's Room. And in both these works and in the Slow Torque of Bonsai, I mean, they're slightly different, but there are, it's a very dark room. I mean, it's black. You can't see your hand in front of your face. And there are objects like, say, a ladder, tools, like it refers to some dirt or something. So in that case, there was a pile of dirt on the floor and some just construction materials, table, whatever. Even wires was in a basement in that case. And then there are a string of strobe lights that are attached, and they strobe just one very bright one shot. So they're not strobing at all. They're just really bright lights that go on just instantaneously. And so, and then I had projections that are made from or projected from small CRT monitors with lenses. So when there is no image, there is no light. It's completely black. Totally necessary for this kind of work. So basically, I would say something, and at that moment, perhaps there was an image, and when the strobe light strobes once, it completely obliterates the image, of course, but then you end up with an after image of these things, this architectural detail, that it's so powerful that it kind of floats in your mind's eye, right? As you blink or whatever you do, it'll move with you. And at the same time, other images are becoming to fade in, almost like osmosis through the wall. It's sort of like, is that really what that is? And it's mixing with this after burn on your eye, in fact. So you have a kind of memory of actual images merging with a physiological image. And also you're kind of trying to hang on to the last phrase and the phrase before that and the phrase before that. So it's a kind of accumulation in this almost forest of after image and new images that you're not even sure if they're images or not. It's a long description, but anyway, this is a very simple, kind of straightforward, but the reason that I became fascinated with it's called the whisper room, but that's actually a narration booth where the sound, when you enter and you close the door, you really feel a kind of instant presence in yourself. It's undeniable. All resonance disappears and you are with yourself. And somehow this image of the microphone just kind of inspired me.
Amazing. You said something about the osmosis of the image. Mm-hmm. And this is something that struck me with the installation of circular breathing when we saw it today, that there's always a moving image, but very often it seems as if it's photographic images. It's in reality also unveiling the nature of the moving image, which is a series or a sequence of frames. How do you want to say something about it? Because we were talking about this, and I find extremely powerful the fact that you constantly feel as if you see something else, which is the same thing but of a different nature than what it actually is. But then the impact is very, very, very strong.
Well, I mean, somehow I can't even really say why the number was 5. In certain ways, at a fifth speed, you're kind of getting closer and closer to kind of a certain kind of deadness, but at the same time, there is this, what's the dilemma again? Zorn dilemma? No,
Zeno's paradox.
Zeno's paradox. Where if you imagine you're halfway to 0, and then you're halfway between there and 0, and you're halfway between there, and basically you never arrive. So I did a work 10 years after this, called Accordions, and then out of that made a work called Blind Spot. And in these, very differently than circular breathing, they have an image, and then more and more black is inserted in. But every time it comes back to the image, it is where it left off. So, yeah, at first it's half speed, third speed, quarter speed, fifth, sixth, a day, an hour, whatever. And then it becomes where the time to the next image is the focus. So I was kind of taking it to the extreme of having an image that you would almost have a celebration, a party or a dinner or something. The image is coming. It's the next month or the year, 5 years, the 10-year anniversary. It's like a comet or an eclipse or something like this, and it's just the next frame. That's all it is. So you could have the 100-year anniversary, and maybe that's the last frame, maybe not. So yeah, it is like, again, it's kind of like opening up time in a very. It makes me think of Lamont Young, where he talks about being inside the sound, and also he says tuning is a function of time. And this is just so powerful to me, because it's kind of like that. You can never get there, a perfect there. You're always tuning. You're always finding yourself maybe slightly better or this or that. But anyway, you're always on your way in some way, on the way to language.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. I wanted to see if there's any questions from the audience, because it would be interesting to open up maybe to questions. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. Yes, I don't.
When you were talking about circular breathing, you talked about the structure, and I think I somewhat understand how it works. But could you maybe say something about sound in that work? How it works, what the source is, how you fabricated it, or is it natural sound? How is it?
The sound, as far as I remember, and in any case, mostly, but maybe all, is whatever sound is with the image. In other words, if all the sounds are coupled with the image. There's not external sound added. So that kind of train sound, it's just the switching.
And they follow the same logic as the image,
yeah,
right?
exactly the same logic, yeah. Although when I'm watching it now, it seems like that. No, there are definitely sounds from images that have already left, like particularly the piano, that comes in every once in a while, probably at the speed where it left off. So I cheated a few times, okay? If you don't cheat, you got to go against, methods,
Any other questions?
I like the comment on artificial intelligence. They're talking about how using artificial intelligence to create art. Recently, I just wondered what your
I'm going to repeat the question.
thought was on that.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat the question. The question is on artificial intelligence to create art, and what are your thoughts on that? Thank you. Sorry, we don't have a microphone, but is there one? Oh, okay. But anyway, it was.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I really appreciate artists, just struggling to do what they do, because in this kind of world, if people can do that, it's probably that it's a necessary practice. It's a necessary stretching out of taking up space and whatever. Nevertheless, I'm not, so far I'm not really or impress is the wrong word, but generative, say, images, I don't find very interesting, in fact, or generative, if that's what you mean, AI generated.
Yes. Yeah, those are the images.
Poetry or the few passages I've read from novels and whatnot. It's kind of like, I've also seen these programs where you can sort of type a description and it will create something along those lines. But, if I say chair, which one comes to your mind? Unfortunately, AI has a mind of its own, and it comes up with a chair. Wow. But if I say chair, it's actually much more powerful than an AI-generated chair, I think. So yeah, that doesn't mean that I don't think that it's possible to use AI. I've used AI in the sense of, for example, trying to find anagrams to words or something like that. I'm sure that these are quantitative computing, and they're showing me all the possibilities. Speaking of AI, in Iceland, I've heard that Bobby Fischer was buried there, so I decided to go to his grave and see where he was buried. And I bring him up only because I guess Big Blue destroyed the world's champ chess player, but I really wondered if it would have destroyed Bobby Fischer.
Thank you.
Maybe if we don't have any other questions, I have one last thing I wanted to ask you, and that's because the work, circular breathing, has been restored or has been migrated, as you say, and for you also, you said earlier that you haven't seen the work for a number of years, and actually I think the team who did the laboratory, who did the restoration, is here, so thank you so much for all of that. But I just wanted to, how did you feel when you saw the restored work, and did it have any different impact on you since the previous state of the work, or how did you feel about the work which has been the same but also different at the same time, this migration of media or a format?
Yeah, they're kind of like separate. There's a lot of separate issues and questions. Any work that is shown in two different spaces is going to be very different. But the one sort of hidden element, which makes you think about it, because let's face it, people say they'll label artworks, with the materials or the process, say 2-channel video or this kind of thing. And circular breathing, one wouldn't necessarily think it, but it began as one file. So it's one file that is going through a switcher that a computer is telling it to spit out 2 frames here, 2 frames here, 2 frames like this, and in a very particular exact method. And so this is now 5 individual files, in which case all of those were kind of recorded. Actually, they were re-edited, I believe, which is a long process. But that aspect of it, there is no difference. I don't see a difference. But this particular installation here is, without a doubt, the best I have seen. And I've seen it maybe 15, 20 times. The last one was in Suwon Museum in Korea about 1.5 years ago, and it was pretty good, but not as good. There's all kinds of issues that this comes down to. You saw the image where it's on pedestals. This is an interesting. You can almost call it interpretation. This really brings up the question of conservation, and I think that installation work, just conceptual work, I don't know what you want to call it, but I think it's really more of a score that should be treated like a musical score. And it has notes, it has very detailed notes, and it has the history of the exhibitions. And these should be combined by smart curators, and it's installed from that. I mean, otherwise you run into things like museums saying, well, I'm not going to show that unless you use the original equipment that it was developed on. And this is silly. This is not about equipment. This is not about this at all. It may be about some kind of, like I've done many works that are CRTs. That's the tube that is taken out of the phrase. CRTs, cathode ray tubes. That's the bulbous part of the older monitors. And that becomes a challenging question, for sure. And you just have to cross that bridge when you come to it. So, anyway.
Well, I would like to thank you greatly for being here. We're grateful that you have come
fun.
to the installation. Thank you for the work. It's great to have the work installed. Thank you all for coming tonight. And you still have time, I think, to see the work if you haven't been able to visit the installation yet. It's on the ground level. So hopefully we will see you again soon at some point. But again, thanks very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.